On Thursday, Senator David Perdue decided to withdraw from the third and final debate of his Senate race after a clip went viral of him getting bodied by Jon Ossoff. Take a look.
Well, perhaps Senator Perdue would have been able to respond properly to the COVID-19 pandemic if you hadn't been fending off multiple federal investigations for insider trading. It's not just that you're a crook, Senator. It's that you're attacking the health of the people that you represent.
All right, and of course that goes on. That video got millions of views. Why? Because it was awesome. Yes, you actually have an example of an establishment Democrat actually being strong for once. And I'm going to get into that. But according to Decision Desk HQ analysis Niles Francis, Perdue, instead of taking part in another debate, will instead travel to Rome, Georgia, at the same time that President Donald Trump will be holding a rally. So that's like a safety blanket right there for, I don't want to debate Jon Ossoff. He's going to call me a crook again. So he runs into the arms of Daddy. What a beta. Cuck. Sad. Ooh, pathetic. Thought these guys were supposed to be tough. But he could not handle being called a crook by one of the most milquetoast Democrats running. Speaking of his opponent, the super milquetoast Democrat, Jon Ossoff, he decides to throw a little salt in it, in that wound there. Here's what he tweeted. Breaking, Senator Perdue just canceled our final debate. At last night's debate, millions saw that Perdue had no answers when I called him out on his record of blatant corruption, widespread disease, and economic devastation. Whew. Damn. Also adding, by the way, shame on you, Senator. So now, look, this is a good example of what Democrats can actually do if they care, if they actually want to win. They have the ability to do this. They have the ability to win. It's just we don't see it happen enough. Now, political corruption is one of the things that actually unites voters of both parties. At least, should in theory, okay? I know Republican voters always talk about, I don't like the corruption, and then they vote for it. But to be fair, of course, we've got corruption in the Democratic Party too, which is one of the things that I like to find in the show. That said, let me show you some polls. Back in 2018, polling indicated that a huge majority of Americans, about 75%, said cleaning up corruption was very important to them. Actually, one of the most important issues, more important than any of the others that were polled. That includes, like, healthcare. So now, that was 2018. That was before coronavirus, obviously. But to be fair, we have seen the effects of corruption in relation to coronavirus. For example, some of the coronavirus aid. The CARES Act, for example, that was a massive transfer of wealth to the top 1%. That's one of the biggest criticisms I have of the coronavirus aid package. And while it helped a lot of people, millions of people, through provisions like a $600 a week federal unemployment benefit, as well as a one-time stimulus check, which should have been a lot more and should have been ongoing. But again, I've talked about the problems with the stimulus check before. I don't really want to rehash all of it. But the whole point is there were some things for regular people, but most of it was a corporate giveaway. There were tons of corporate giveaways in it. For example, defense contractors, big corporations, they got most of the aid that they said would be targeted towards small businesses. And you've had tens of thousands of small businesses that have ended up closing as a result of coronavirus. You also had, for example, money that was supposed to go to COVID relief given to the Pentagon, but they spent it on defense contractors building things like jet engines. So that's a gigantic example of corruption, which is and still will be a pretty big issue to tackle as the years go on. In a Trump administration or a Biden administration, there's a lot of corruption. What Ossoff is doing, though, politically is pretty smart. He's running an anti-corruption campaign, like a lot of Democrats did in 2018 when they swept into the House. And what Donald Trump did, to give him credit, in 2016 when he said, drain the swamp. Obviously, he did not drain the swamp. He made the swamp bigger because he's essentially a swamp monster. And if, I don't know, maybe to be fair, he says, well, I'll drain the swamp. I'm going to drain the swamp by hiring it and letting it fire itself or get itself put in prison. I don't know, whatever your perspective is on that one. But anyway, look, as far as being anti-corruption, that's a populist move. It is popular. That's why we call it populist. And Ossoff was smart enough to try to use that to be able to see that, especially since you had allegations of insider trading that involved Senator Perdue. In fact, on January 24, 2020, the Senate Committees on Health and Foreign Relations held a meeting with only senators present to brief them about COVID-19 and how it could affect the United States. Following the meeting, Senator Kenny Loeffler and her husband, Jeffrey Sprecher, chairman of the New York Stock Exchange, made 27 transactions to sell stock worth between $1,275,000 and $3,100,000 in 2 transactions to buy stock in Citrix Systems, which is, of course, a company that does online telecommunications, which saw an increase following the stock market crash. Senator Perdue also made his own transactions, about a series of 112, with stocks that sold of around $824,000 in value, and bought stocks worth $1.8 million, including stocks in DuPont worth $185,000. DuPont, by the way, is a company that makes PPE, and that just happened to happen on the same day as the Senate briefing up to March 2nd. Another person involved, of course, was Richard Burr. Senator Burr, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, stated in an op-ed on how the government could respond to coronavirus, saying this, quote, "Luckily, we have a framework in place that has put us in a better position than any other country to respond to a public threat like coronavirus." That aged very poorly. Look, the United States is not doing well when it comes to coronavirus. We've talked about that a lot. I'm not saying that we're the worst in the world when dealing with COVID, but we're not number one. We're certainly not the best. We're doing fairly badly. Burr and his wife sold about $628,000, between $628,000 to $1.7 million worth of stocks bought through 33 transactions. And on February 27th, Burr stated, this was at a private fundraiser. I'm sorry, it's a private luncheon, not a fundraiser. That he said, quote, "I can tell you this, it is much more aggressive in its transmission than anything we have seen in recent history." So that's Senator Richard Burr. And so that's all involved when you want to talk about corruption. That is a great example where you have senators that are doing insider trading. They know this information the American people do not know, and the first thing they moved to do was to protect their own stock portfolios, to protect their own assets. John Ossoff is really smart to be able to point that out and talk about that, as David Perdue was involved. And by the way, that corruption was so bad that even Tucker Carlson called on Richard Burr to resign. He actually agreed with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on that. But the lesson here is calling out corruption is popular. And you know what's also more popular? Doing something about corruption. So now if John Ossoff does end up getting into power, what is he going to do about corruption going forward? I don't know. If he wins, I suppose we try to hold his feet to the fire, just like we should with all of our elected officials. And if they don't, well, then we should try to replace them with people who are not corrupt. As for Perdue, sad baby bitch. Running back to Donald Trump after getting bodied is just hilarious and epic. Oh, that mean Democrat. I can't debate him. I can't debate him. You have no answers. Terrible. Pathetic. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.